in a maze of shacks by a deranged pedophile whose wife would take him to sing at children's playgrounds. How did she fight her way out of 18 years of mind control?
How did you stay sane?
2 babies born to a child who had no medical care in a backyard. 2 babies she loves.
I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I had somebody that was mine. I wasn't alone.
And tonight we go in search of the answer. How did parole officers miss her 60 times? You'll see tonight for the first time video obtained by the prosecutor, a parole officer coming to the sex offender's house and never rescuing a girl just a few feet away. Chris Cuomo investigates.
Mr. Mesner, we just want to ask you a question. They hear a report that there are kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all. That's what I don't get. It seems impossible to common sense.
And there is someone else at the center of this story, a mother with a broken heart and strength of steel who will never give up. Her challenge to law enforcement tonight, and the story of the day her baby finally comes home.
I remember saying, come quick.
And I remember telling you, I'm coming, baby, I'm coming.
A stolen life, a child's courage, a mother's love, and victory achieved through the power of indestructible hope. Good evening, so glad you're with us. In her book, A Stolen Life, Jaycee Dugard has a quote from T.S. Eliot about people who carry the light of hope in the world, who hold it close and wait wherever the journey takes them. We want to thank all of you who've gathered to watch her story. Some of it is harrowing. Some of it will make you simply outraged, especially when you see the times law enforcement could have saved her and did not. And at the predators who defy understanding. But in the end, Jaycee Dugard would find a way to save herself with a light no one could extinguish, holding on to hope, a mother who would never let go, and some caring and observant strangers who would make it possible one day for her to call her mother and say, I am alive, I'm coming home. She was a little girl with a name right out of a storybook, Jaycee Lee Dugard, age 11 years old.
Hello?
A girl who loved her mom, her little sister, a cat named Monkey, and school and books and stories, and by holding on to the memory of everything she loved, survived and would triumph after a battle in a monstrous backyard, where a convicted sex offender let out of prison, Philip Garrido, and his wife Nancy, kidnapped her, handcuffed her, imprisoned her, had her give birth outside. And over again, the justice system would fail her. For 18 years, she was forbidden to say her own name, so this is how her book, A Stolen Life, begins.
Let's get one thing straight. My name is Jaycee Lee Dugard. I was kidnapped by a stranger at age 11, and I want Philip Garrido to know that I no longer have to keep his secret. I was happy.
She is 31 years old. She looks impossibly young.
I know, I was worried about should I wear heels?
She is also someone who laughs a lot and has delight in ordinary things on ordinary days.
Oh
You
my
drive.
God, I do drive. I drive very safely.
You would never know what she survived
Oh, my pine cone?
unless you notice how her
Well,
face changes when she speaks of the past. And the charm around her neck. It's a pine cone.
Back then, it was the last thing I touched. You know, the last grip on me. Now it's a symbol of hope and new beginnings, and that there is life after something tragic.
And tonight, she says this is what she wants to do. She will not speak of every detail she has written in her book, but lessons of hope and survival, and what it meant to her to have a mother who would never let go. It is June 10th, 1991. Jaycee Dugard wakes up in this house in Lake Tahoe, California, where her family's moved because it's a safe place to live. She's in the 5th grade and remembers worrying about the field trip coming up because she's so shy. Remembers dressing in her favorite all-pink outfit. And she remembers the mom she absolutely adores had to leave early for her work as a typesetter at a print house and didn't keep a promise.
She said that she'd give me a kiss goodbye. She didn't. I wasn't mad. I just, thought I'd catch her when I got home, tell her, you got to give me a kiss next time.
She also remembers there was something she had wanted to ask her mom.
I wanted to ask my mom if I could shave for the field trip.
Shave your legs?
Yeah.
Big question
Didn't want to be
for her.
embarrassed. Yeah. Didn't want to be embarrassed. So that was the big question on my mind.
She walks up the hill from the house to catch the school bus, the way her mother taught her, looking out for traffic.
Walked up the side of the hill. That was the safe way to go against traffic. And halfway up, my world changed in an instant. I thought, oh, somebody's looking for directions.
A gray car pulls up. A man rolls down the window.
Because what else would it be? And his hand shoots out, and I just feel numb. My whole body is tingly. I don't know what it's from. I fall back in the bushes.
She had been paralyzed by a stun gun.
I lost control of my bladder. I wasn't even embarrassed. No time to be embarrassed.
On the ground, the sharp edges of a pine cone are the last things she touches before she comes to, face down, on the floor in the back seat of a car.
I remember my throat felt very dry and scratchy and like I had been screaming, but I don't remember screaming.
The man behind the wheel is Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, supposedly monitored by parole officers and doctors. Holding her down on the floor is his wife, Nancy. The district attorney believes Nancy scouted this little girl for her husband as a prize.
Did they say anything? Did you hear anything?
No, not at first. After we were driving for a while, I heard the driver say, I can't believe we got away with it. And he started laughing. I think I blacked out again or something. It was like the most horrible moment of your life times 10.
120 miles later, the car stops in front of this house on a neighborhood street. Garrido tells her to be quiet.
I said, I think it's probably one of the only things I said was, my family doesn't have a lot of money, they can't pay the ransom. That's what I kidnap as ransom, right? Yeah. No. Not always.
He is 40 years old, 6 feet 4 inches tall. She is 11, 4 feet 6, 80 pounds. He takes away the pink clothes she dressed in that morning. The only thing she has left is a little ring shaped like a butterfly. She will hide from him for 18 years. Blanket over her head, he walks her through a small area of grass toward a fence where an opening is concealed by a tarp. And hidden behind the fence, a deranged collection of sheds and storage units, which the people monitoring Garrido would not search. One of them, tiny, completely soundproof. He leads her inside and takes out handcuffs.
Said that they were the fuzzy kind, so they wouldn't hurt as bad. Whatever.
Behind your back?
Yeah. There was a pallet on the floor. And then he said he'd be back later. And he shut the studio or the soundproof door and then the other door with the lock.
You heard that
lock? Yeah. I can still hear it consciously or when I'm awake. Just some sounds and smells and just don't leave you.
He warns her there are dogs outside, Dobermans. They'll attack if she tries to escape. She notices there's one window covered with bars and a towel. He leaves.
At one point, you write that you get up and you take your teeth and you pull a towel off.
I wanted to see where I was. Yeah. I couldn't use my hands. And there was just weeds and some kind of fence.
Naked, in handcuffs, she drifts in and out of sleep.
Crying?
I didn't really want to because then you can't wipe them away. Then you get all sticky and that sounds awful, but, I tried not to cry because I couldn't wipe them away or, and then they get itchy. And
At one point, she made a note to remember the sound of the train so it would help her mom find her.
then later it was just listening to lawnmowers and airplanes, anything for human contact, I guess. I was so lonely. I felt so alone.
Have you seen Jaycee Lee Dugard?
And 120 miles away, the mother who loves her and will never give up goes on television to make her first plea.
She's pretty, young, innocent child.
Friends have been searching all day and evening.
Police started searching the neighborhood.
Police set up a roadblock and go door to door. Her classmates are out in the streets holding up signs.
And it's time that she comes home.
And she has written that all alone that night, she decided to cling to something that would sustain her. There is moonlight streaming through the towel. It makes her think of her mother.
We would always sit on the porch and we would debate whether the full moon or the crescent moon was the better moon. I always liked the full moon and she liked the crescent. And just always made me think of her.
Do you remember the song you and your mom sang? Looking at the moon?
You are the moon. How does it go? I forget.
I love the moon and the moon
Sees me. I see the moon and the moon sees me. God bless the moon and God bless me.
When we come back, a mother's search.
You were always there. You never left me.
Parole officers, doctors who miss what is in front of them. And the story Jaycee Dugard will tell for all the victims of sex abuse. A story she says is his shame, not hers.
Can't steal anything else. Can't steal our love for each other. Couldn't take that away.
And also ahead, the women who save her and the day she comes home.
Once again, Diane Sawyer.
We want to begin now with a parental warning for anyone who might have children in the room, and also with some numbers we should all know. There are 20,000 abductions of children every year by strangers. 99% of them will be returned fairly soon. But of the 100 who are held long-term, only about a half return alive. And fewer still have the strength to bear witness to the reality of what predators do. Jaycee Dugard said she wanted to write it for all the victims and as a call to action for judges, psychiatrists, parole officers, and any of us who might be able to save a child's life.
Okay. This is Philip Garrido. In a video obtained by ABC News from the prosecutors, he is singing one of the songs he wrote. He told everyone he was a musical genius on the verge of a big break. He also calls himself the witness, rambling on about the Bible, saying he was chosen to hear the voices of demon angels in the walls, in the ground, and that he will save the world. And doctors in the parole system know about him. He's even given medication, and everything he does is supposed to be monitored. His first arrest was 1972 for raping a 14-year-old girl who was too afraid to testify, so the case collapsed. 5 years later, in a rented storage container, he raped a woman for 8 hours who managed to escape. Because of her, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison, but he was released after a quarter of that sentence was served. Later, he would even receive a letter of commendation from the parole board heralding him for his personal accomplishments. And parole officers would visit him 60 times at his house, and though they knew his patterns, they never looked hard enough in the backyard to find a little girl. Jaycee Dugard, imprisoned 2 hours from her home. She didn't know it, but she was in Antioch on the outskirts of San Francisco. It is still that first week in June 1991. The 11-year-old girl, handcuffed, arms behind her back, is aching, skin rubbed raw. Philip Garrido is her only human contact, and sometimes he'll just sit and tell her funny stories or bring her fast food. Classic approach, we are told, for a pedophile.
I depended on him for bathroom, food, company.
You had no water, toothbrush,
No.
toilet.
No
What
toilet.
was the toilet?
Toilet was a bucket. Well, it had handcuffs on, so it was very difficult. So
She writes in the book she has no idea what he's planning to do. She's never heard about sexual abuse.
Had you ever heard the phrase?
nope, not into boys, other than, maybe the New Kids on the Block or something like that.
Sex was Ken and Barbie.
Yeah, laying together. That's what it was.
That's what you thought it was.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah.
In her book, what she has written is unflinching and detailed. I ask her why she decided to write it all. She said she wanted to do it for victims of sex abuse, who often keep secrets, along with fear and shame.
Why not look at it? Stare it down until it can't scare you anymore.
She worked on all this with her therapist, Rebecca Bailey, who specializes in family reunification after trauma.
It is not her shame. Those things happen to her. They're not who she is.
This is the studio. That's where it was first taken. I didn't want there to be any more secrets.
As we continue, we will not bring you all the details in the book. We said she should only say out loud what she wants to say. She tells us right after she's kidnapped, he forces her into a shower with him, and she's never seen an unclothed man. Again, she's just 11. It will be at the end of that first week that he brings her a milkshake.
Comes in with the milkshake, and I was getting used to him coming in. But he said things were going to be different
This time.
this time.
She is still in handcuffs the first time he rapes her.
I remember crying, but they were silent. Just tears running down my face.
She tells us she remembers seeing a trail of ants make their way toward the untouched milkshake. It will continue day after day.
Before I ate meals, it felt like every day. Like I said, time is hard to judge, but there's a switch that I had to shut off.
Just go someplace else.
Just went someplace else.
At one point, he brings in a TV, though she can't see the news. She doesn't know. Her mother is now asking neighbors to keep their porch lights on in case she comes home.
Lifts my spirit real high. I'm overwhelmed. This is more than I can ask for. Give me a light. This is gonna bring her home. I know it.
In the beginning, you could only see QVC.
Yeah, I would fall asleep to the sound of jewelry being sold. But at least it was talking.
And she tells us she thinks it was almost a month and a half later when Garrido takes her out of that soundproof storage unit into a room next door.
Over here, the blue building.
He tells her the demon angels, those voices he hears, had let him take her because she will help him with his sexual problems. And again, this is a convicted sex offender still in the care of court-mandated doctors. He had one appointment 3 days before he kidnapped Jaycee, and another appointment 4 days after. But he tells her society has ignored him, and that's why she is there.
That's what I was here for. Yeah, that's why he got me.
And if you do it, you would keep other little girls safe? Because
yeah,
it would
he was
protect...
always, protect other people, so he didn't have to go out and do this to anybody else.
Did you believe that you were protecting other little girls?
I think I did. I think on some level I did, yeah.
He put that stun gun out on a table where she could see it. He got out equipment for drugs, and so began what he would call runs, drug-filled binges for days. In the book, she writes what he forced her to do. This is what she is comfortable telling us.
Well, they were very long. Usually started out with, he would dress me up for hours because he was taking methamphetamines and speed. He called it speed. He would get focused on one thing for long periods of time. And then it usually went to him with his little books of cutouts that he would cut out for hours and paste on little girls from magazines and porno magazines. It didn't make sense to me at all, but that's what he did.
And then sometimes he would make her listen for the voices. The ones he says he can hear in the walls. And when it's over, she says, he sobs.
He would apologize and
That's the confusing part.
beg your forgiveness.
Tell me what an awful man he was, you know, and here I am trying to, feeling, you know, hurting, because it hurt, you know, wanting it to stop, and I have to comfort him.
After the tears, to keep her compliant, more threats. Once he said he'd sell her to people who would lock her in a cage. She said she was shaking.
He would come up with
the unknown that would always be more terrifying than what I knew. After, you know, I got used to I don't know if you ever get used to that, but you can get used to things. Once I got used to that, it would be the unknown thing that was more terrifying than actually keeping with the runs and doing something that was, at least I knew what was going to happen. It's when he would invent new things and
all night long you would think that's what he was going to do to you.
I begged him, you know, I'll do it better, you know, I'll be good, because it was the unknown that was terrifying.
Did you think it was going to be the rest of your life?
It sounded like it.
And as the first month passes, remember, there's no way she can run. The handcuffs, the bolted doors, the dogs outside.
There was not a day that I didn't cry. I felt like there would never, ever be a day that I wouldn't cry again. And then, after a while, I told myself I can't cry anymore.
What's the most haunting memory?
That lock, hearing the lock. I know I said that earlier, but for some reason that. And the bed, it was a squeaky bed. Squeaky pull-out bed. I guess the noise, the sounds. It's weird what sticks in your head, but sounds.
How did you stay sane?
I don't know. I was still alive. There was still hope. Still hope.
I'm trying to imagine how you are coping. I'm trying to imagine.
I don't know. I can't imagine being beaten to death, you know. And you can't imagine being kidnapped and raped, you know. So it's just, you just do what you have to do to survive.
And again, she says she is telling her story so that the thousands of other survivors of sexual abuse know that survival is your strength, not your shame.
It's that T.S. Eliot quote you have in your book.
Yeah, I had
about hope.
Thinking I have to hope in something. Hope was in the wrong place. But sometimes you just have to hold on to any kind of hope to survive.
And there's one other measure of Jaycee Dugard's willingness to stare down the truth. It turns out Philip Garrido videotaped what he did to her, and the prosecutors asked her to look at them. She says she did, to make sure he had not kidnapped any other little girls. And every tape was of her.
Next, the mother moving heaven and earth to find her child. And 7 months into her imprisonment, someone new enters Jaycee Dugard's room. Nancy Garrido, Philip's wife. Together, they try to take Jaycee's identity away, and she fights to hold on to it inside.
In some ways, she's just as evil as Philip. Very twisted minds.
And later, Chris Cuomo investigates the colossal failures of the justice system.
Mr. Mesner, we just want to ask you a question.
And if you think you might be witnessing child abuse, there's a number to call on our website, abcnews.com. As we resume, 7 months have now passed since Jaycee Dugard was taken from her mother, her sister, her life. That field trip she worried about, long over. Her 5th grade classmates have now graduated elementary school. Her mother is still pleading with everyone to keep on searching for her.
She is coming home. That gives me a lot of hope. a lot of optimism. Somebody's, feeding me dreams for a reason.
And by the way, her biological father had left the family, was never in Jaycee's life. There was a stepfather, but Jaycee was not close to him. 2 hours away, Jaycee is now being moved back and forth from the soundproof room to the larger room where she's handcuffed to the bed. Her only company, a spider, she names Bianca. Then one day, Garrido says there's someone he wants her to meet, and he wants them to be friends.
She enters the picture.
Yes.
Nancy.
Nancy Garrido is his wife. They had met in a visiting room at Leavenworth Prison. He, a prisoner there, she visiting her uncle. She, a Jehovah's Witness. He talked to her about the Bible. She was also in the car the day Jaycee Dugard was stun gunned and kidnapped. She was the one who pinned the little girl to the floor with her legs. Now she shows up bringing a purple bear and a Barbie doll and chocolate milk.
I was so lonely. I craved any kind of attention. I wanted her to like me.
Because?
Because I felt like if she doesn't like me, then I'm going to get in trouble.
Jaycee remembers using the cartons from the chocolate milk to try to make furniture for her Barbie.
Nancy starts bringing me meals. There's a TV over there, so I could watch TV as long as it was low.
She told you she was sorry what they'd done to you?
Mm-hmm. She told me that she cried too. In some ways, she's just as manipulative because she would cry and say, I can't believe that he did this. I wish he would have got a headache that morning that he took you.
And she knew everything.
Yeah, she knew everything. Everything. What makes somebody do that in the first place? Take somebody else's child just to satisfy your husband. I don't know, she's just as evil as Philip. Very twisted minds.
Twisted.
Okay. Does it say record still?
Yes.
Good.
Remember the video obtained by the prosecutors of Philip Garrido playing his guitar? Again, he is a convicted sex offender supposed to be monitored, at times even wearing an ankle bracelet. But here, he is singing at a children's playground. And holding the camera, his wife Nancy, who will furtively move it off him away to gather secret pictures of little girls playing.
You got me real good?
Yes. I can see you really good.
As we've said, later tonight, we will go to law enforcement and seek answers. When they are arrested, Nancy Garrido will also be charged with kidnapping and rape by force. We remember a moment from the courtroom. Philip Garrido, Nancy Garrido, in a jury box separated by their lawyers. And suddenly he looks at her and mouths the words, I love you. Even as she kept scouting little girls for her pedophile husband, Nancy Garrido, like him, would alternate motherly concern with coldness and cruelty.
Jealous.
Very jealous of me for some reason. Like I wanted her husband to rape me. Very jealous and sick.
She worked by day as an aide in a nursing home, but when Philip Garrido vanished for a month, she replaced him as jailer.
A whole month. He's gone.
Yeah, she said that he was on an island with a friend, but he was actually sent back to prison.
For failing a drug test.
So it's the two of you.
Yeah. She would lock us in every night. She wanted to watch this scary movie called The Unborn. It was awful. It was very scary. And then she would leave in the morning and lock the door.
And the two of them also worked together to use Jaycee's love of animals to manipulate the little girl, giving her kittens that would then mysteriously vanish.
Well, it was Tigger, and then it was Snowy, who, I don't know what happened to her.
Another kitten was named Eclipse, a girl kitten. Jaycee loved so much she asked for paper and a pen to make a little diary. She writes how grateful she was for the little kitten and how much the Garridos told her they paid for her, adding, last night I started to cry and she heard me. She came to me and sat next to me, and after that I felt a little better. She means more to me than my own life. I see her love for me. And every entry is studied with a little heart on a string, like a balloon. the little kitten Eclipse would also disappear during one of Garrido's drug-filled runs. And when Garrido happened to notice that the little girl had signed her name, Jaycee, on that journal,
I actually wrote my name, and I tore it out when he saw it.
Because he said you had to.
Yes, and that was the last time.
the last time for 18 years she'd be allowed to write or speak her name. Losing her name and fighting to hold on to the memory of the face that is keeping her alive, her mom.
I wanted to see her more than anything.
And worried you'd forget.
Worried I'd forget what she looked like or what she sounded like. Would she forget me?
Would she want you after this?
Yep. Being a mom now, you know, I know that she never forgot about me because I can never forget about my kids. But, you know, when you're a kid and you think you're easily forgettable.
And her mother, Terry, is also fighting to hold on as 1 year passes, and then a second. She's alone except for a couple of her friends who will quit their jobs to help her. On TV, she shows Jaycee's room untouched since her disappearance. It's where Terry says she goes to pray every night.
Even though she's not here, she's still in my heart.
And when 34 months have passed, 1,029 days since Jaycee Dugard was kidnapped, the handcuffs occasionally come off, but she's still always locked in a bolted room. One night, the Garridos are with her. They are watching the 10 Commandments on TV. For the first time, they bring her cooked food, corned beef and cabbage. It's Easter, 1994.
And then they tell you they think you're pregnant.
Yeah.
4.5 months pregnant, 13 years old. As we said, by now Jaycee Dugard has been in captivity for 1,029 days. A sketch artist tried to imagine the little girl now entering her teens, but those posters will weather and fall away. By now, her mother is holding rummage sales to raise money for private investigators. She is sending more than 1 million flyers across the United States while working and raising Jaycee's little sister Shayna. And 2 hours away in the backyard, Jaycee Dugard is pregnant, still bolted in, not allowed to go outside, sit in the sun, or see the sky. She learned the link between sex and pregnancy from TV.
Did you have any idea what it meant to give birth?
No, I had never seen it happen. There was this show that he would talk about a lot, Growing Up Baby or something like that. So I'd watch that, and he was watching birthing videos and just learned.
And he said that he would read up on it and he would do it?
Yeah.
She makes up little stories she tells to the baby growing in her stomach.
August 18th, 1994, you're how old?
14.
Having a baby in a backyard.
Yep, I did.
She is locked in, alone, watching Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman when she feels the first sharp pain.
You're in labor and there's nobody there.
I didn't know I was
You're
in labor,
locked up?
but yeah, I was still, locked at that time. Just scared. It was terrible pain. Didn't know what was going on. Hadn't seen anybody all day.
She will be in labor all by herself for hours. Finally, the Garridos return. They give her codeine. The labor continues for another 12 hours, and with a complication. The baby is still inside her. Philip Garrido uses his hand to unwrap the umbilical cord from the baby's neck.
He had seen that on one of the shows, that's what you do, because she wasn't coming out. So he did that, and she came out, and then I saw her. She was beautiful. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Had somebody that was mine. I wasn't alone. And I knew I could never let anything happen to her. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I did.
And when Garrido takes the baby,
He held her in a chair and prayed that he would never hurt her.
Was it your terror?
Yeah, every day.
3 years later, another birth in the backyard.
I have a second person to love and to love me, and maybe another little piece of my mom to hang on to. I wanted to see her more than anything. Every day, in the beginning, like I said, I would cry every day and be hardest when I would think about her and what she was doing, and then trying to convince myself she was better without me. Easier, you know, she had Shayna, but I wanted her.
And for the next 2 years, as doctors profess to monitor Garrido, along with all those parole officers who come into the house, Dugard is in the back, locked up in a room with 2 little girls, taking care of them with what she's learned from TV, breastfeeding first one, then the other. Garrido, she writes in the book, still erupts with anger, inexplicable rants about her behavior, which she tries to keep altering to avoid his moods. At other times, long lectures about the Bible, how he is the chosen one. And he continues to make her listen to voices he says he hears with a machine he has built using plastic cups.
What are bionic ears?
It's like a sound amplifier, and I would have to listen to the air conditioner, sit with the headphones for hours, tuning in, he called it.
Finally, when she's a young mother, Garrido builds a fence, walling off the entire backyard. He gives her a little tent outside. She writes about the first time she can walk outside. I can feel it, the sun warm on my face. And experts who write about survival say nearly all those who make it find some way to create meaning in the reality of their days, amid the trash and squalor.
You planted
Yeah.
little flowers.
Yeah, I like to garden.
This was your garden?
Yep.
Even little flowers inside the tent. And then the girl who once loved books and stories decides for her girls to create a little school.
We had math, social studies, English, and history was the other one. And I would teach them the best I could. I only had a 5th grade education, so my math wasn't my strongest suit.
In a secret act of defiance, she saves little scraps of paper and begins writing a journal she manages to hide from him. Sometimes it still sounds like a child.
I would live in my own world, and I would have superpowers, like the power to heal people and animals.
Sometimes she wonders if out in the world there could be a soulmate for her.
The physical abuse was all I knew.
But
things that I saw on television were so different. And, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Look at this. I would search the world for the top teachers if I could get out of here, and psychologists and doctors. And I would organize, and we would open a free clinic for homeless people to come and interact with animals.
Time on my hands to think about things I would do.
And then one day, Garrido tells her they need to make Nancy feel better. He has decided that from now on the girls will call Nancy their mom. They will be told that Jaycee is just their sister. At another point, she writes in her journal,
I want to be free to come and go as I please, free to say I have a family, free.
Free to have my family.
And next, the great mystery. Why didn't she try to escape?
Did you think about taking those 2 girls and running?
Why is this door blocked?
For the first time ever, you're seeing a video obtained by prosecutors of a parole officer going through the house of convicted sex offender Philip Garrido. The voice you hear is Nancy Garrido taunting the officer.
What does a parole agent do for his parolee? Mr.
Ma'am, you can come in office and we'll discuss that.
And what you should know is Jaycee Dugard is just 30 feet away. On another occasion, Garrido actually lets her into the house. She even has a casual exchange with a parole officer, not daring to say who she was.
I actually talked to one of the agents, and the agent proceeded to give Philip his urine test and left. This made me feel like didn't really care.
And as we said, 60 times parole officers will come to Garrido's house and not question what they are seeing. Even when a neighbor called 911 once and said she had seen girls in his yard, nothing was done. At another point, Garrido once had a court-mandated ankle bracelet. If officials had studied the data, which tracks exact movement, they would have seen this: a handful of blue dots in the house. But look at all those red dots. What was he doing all that time? In the yard. Chris Cuomo investigates their inaction later. And so more and more years go by, summers, fall, winter. Jaycee Dugard's little friends from the 5th grade are now entering college. She has been told to take a new name.
Who were you?
I was Alyssa. I liked the actor Alyssa Milano on Who's the Boss, and I couldn't be Jaycee, so I picked another name.
And by 1999, the Garridos feel so confident no one will find her, they all go out to a kind of carnival called the Corn Fest. We got actual news photos of the crowd that day. She's 19, 40,000 people are there. Had any of them heard of her or seen the flyers? We pored over them, hoping she'd be there in plain sight. We didn't find her.
And who were you inside when you would be out among people?
Hiding. Afraid I'm going to make a mistake and do something wrong.
And no one seemed to see you?
No, nobody noticed.
She said by then she'd gained weight and her blonde hair had turned brown.
Did you know that there was an artist's attempt to imagine what you looked like? What do you think?
I don't think it looks like me.
Which brings us to one of the great mysteries of human behavior. If she was out in the world, why didn't she run? What was the psychological stun gun that paralyzed her action, even when the doors were unlocked?
Classic. Classic. Manipulation, being responsible for everything from time to food to human companionship.
And you see it over and over again.
You do see it over and over again.
Her therapist, Rebecca Bailey, says what happened is not Stockholm Syndrome, but a kind of coping, an adaptive helplessness. It comes with years of abuse, when the emotional handcuffs become stronger than the tangible ones in the hands of a predatory expert.
So he was a mastermind, and in his narcissism was able to weave people into believing his stories. He had a prior rape in which he had held the woman captive and was able to talk a police officer away from the site, convinced initially the police officer that this naked woman screaming was in fact enjoying being with him.
After the children were born, Garrido stopped the sexual relationship.
Did you think of him as father?
Never. Father to the kids. No,
Dictator?
just somebody who always knew what to do. I depended on him for everything.
And it seems you can almost see something in her face when she tries to go back to that time, searching for reasons.
Did you think about taking those two girls and running?
I'm sure I did, but it wasn't something I felt I could do.
Because?
The situation felt like it wasn't an option. I don't know how else to explain it. There was no leaving.
What would it have taken for you to believe you could leave?
I've asked myself that question many times. The mind manipulation, plus the physical abuse I suffered in the beginning. There was no leaving. Maybe if one of the girls were being hurt.
And everyone who thinks that that maternal impulse would just scoop them up to run doesn't.
They were safe. I was being told that the outside world was dangerous.
Ironically enough, filled with rapists and pedophiles.
Yes, and pedophiles. I couldn't protect them out there. It's like what I knew was safe, the unknown that was out there was terrifying, especially when thinking about the girls.
You can see it in her journal. She writes about her fear and wonders how she could live or survive on the outside.
He helped her to believe he was the only person that she could be safe with. She had parole officers coming to the house.
Right now I'm searching the house.
And at some point, it's logical to assume you would say, does anybody even know that I'm here or even care that I'm here?
And even when she is now in her 20s, Garrido has started a printing business. Jaycee is designing cards and invitation on a computer with internet. Her mother on her mind, her hands still unable to move.
He said that the computer keeps track of all that stuff, and he could see that.
A
couple of clicks.
A couple of clicks. But you never...
I never did it. Something always held me back. It was like I still had those handcuffs on.
Do you think you'll ever understand it? Why you didn't leave?
I don't think so.
In fact, after she was found, one of her first questions to her therapist was, is he crazy or am I? But the real miracle is that even as Jaycee Dugard was drowning in the undertow of Garrido and his control, she kept clinging fiercely to fading memories of mother, love, and hope.
She kept her hope. I don't know how she did that. You know, how did I keep my hope? How did she keep her hope?
And look again at those little secret journals. She makes a list of dreams for the future.
First thing on the list.
See my mom.
See my mom.
And?
Ride in a hot air balloon.
Still ahead, the impossible happens. 2 campus cops do what an entire federal bureaucracy had failed to do. They will make the move that will catch 2 predators and save a life. Jaycee Dugard, after 18 years, is about to hear her mother's voice.
I walked in, I'm so happy, I'm so happy.